Hey everyone, I'm Leah Klinke,
And I'm Kate Phillips.
and welcome back to the Big Life Podcast. We are so excited to be here today because we finally have some real soccer to talk about now.
Yes, this week we're going to dive into our very first games of the season. And we also have a special guest joining us today. We're going to sit down with my strength and conditioning coach, Ana Menendez. She's going to give some incredible insight about our in season workouts, injury prevention, plus some great advice for athletes who are just getting started with strength training.
But first, we're going to catch up on how the opening games went this past week. So, Kate, how was your first game? I know you guys only had one this week. How did that go?
Yes. So we played South Dakota State. They were actually a really great team. Obviously we didn't know a ton of about them because it was the first game. We ended up tying 1-1, which is kind of annoying. You always want to finish a game strong. We gave up a late goal. But our team did well. We learned a lot about like what we want to do in our attack, and obviously defensively. But I think we played really well. We scored off a corner kick, which is always exciting when it's the first game.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
lots to learn from that game, definitely. And we're excited. We have our second game tomorrow, so that'll be exciting. So, Leah, how did your first two games go?
They, went pretty good. Not too smooth, but it was good. Our first game we played Western Michigan on Thursday, and we ended up beating them 2-1. They're a very good team. They win a lot of games, and they have in the past years. So it was a good battle from us, a good fight, and they were a great team. So I'm sure they're gonna have a very good season, but we came out with a win, so that was a good game for us. And then we traveled to Arkansas and played Arkansas on Sunday, and we ended up tying them. Obviously, not the result we wanted, but they're a very good team. They were number 6, we were number 2, so it was a big matchup. There was a lot of fans. It was competitive. It was crazy at times. The ball was in the air a lot. So just really competitive, but a great environment. We gave up kind of a late goal, but that's okay. We have a lot to learn and to take away from that game, but they're a very good team too. So that was a really good matchup for us. Kate, how does it feel to finally be playing like real games after all of this preseason prep?
Yeah, it felt so good, like finally just like doing the thing we love the most. Like obviously we love practice and like training and everything, but just getting to play with our team and kind of getting all of those like jitters out a little bit. Because the first game, always like some crazy stuff happening, like you were saying. So it's always good to just kind of get it out of the way those first couple games and then finally get it settle in a little bit. So kind of happy that we got that out of the way and looking forward to our next couple games here in a week. How about you?
Yeah. Yeah, kind of just to mirror what you said, it's just good. Kind of just getting your feet under you, getting the first few games out of the way. It does fly by, like the fact that we're about to play our third game on Thursday, 2 days, or I guess the day this comes out. So, it's kind of crazy how fast it goes by, but so you kind of always just have to be present in the moment. And after one game, no matter if it went really well or really bad, you just have to move on to the next because there's so
Mhm.
much more to come. So yeah, now let's kind of talk about some of the results this past week. So I feel like one of the most notable ones was Tennessee beating number 1 UNC 2-0. So
I know.
Tennessee, I feel like, is looking really good. They've scored like I think 9 goals this past
Yeah,
weekend.
I think in the past week they had scored what, like 11 goals. I don't think giving up a goal, that's, exactly where you want to be, right? Go and
Hmm.
beat the number one team and then go and play. I think they played Western Kentucky, maybe. I might be completely wrong, so don't check me on that. But they went and scored 9 goals.
Hmm.
So great start for them because nowhere else you'd rather be scoring 2 goals shut out against UNC and then going and having a game. I think, I don't know if it was a freshman. Somebody scored 5 goals in that second game, which is
Yeah.
amazing.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. Actually crazy. Okay, so also some other results is Iowa ended up beating Arkansas in a crazy game, 3-2 is kind of back and forth, but Iowa pulled that off. Notre Dame obviously tied Arkansas. FSU beat Florida 5-0. That was kind of a statement game for FSU.
Mhm.
Of course,
Yeah.
they're rivals. And then we have UCLA beating Georgia 1-0, and then Stanford beating Santa Clara 5-1. So I'm sure all of the rankings are going to be changed up next week because of these results. But it's fun to see all of this happening.
Yeah, another one I saw that was pretty interesting just because SEC, Texas lost to Northwestern State 3-2. Texas was the reigning SEC champs. Obviously, they lost like three they lost a lot of players, big players that went and played professionally. But I think that was for us SEC, that was a pretty big like shock a little bit.
Hmm.
Just because that program's really done well in the past in the Big 12 and now the SEC. So just interesting to see.
Yeah, right. That was a crazy result. I think it's also important to just like seeing that result and the other results, like you can't underestimate any team. Like
Yeah.
you can't just go in thinking you're gonna run someone over because you're not. Everyone's gonna give you a battle, especially if you are in the top of the rankings or in the top of the conference. Like your team is just gonna have a target on your back. So everyone's coming after you. Their whole season is based off of that game. So that was probably Northwestern State's best game. And so they were ready for it and they were able to win. So I mean, kudos to them. That was great.
Yeah. I think also going back to last week, we talked about the rankings, the preseason rankings. Again, mean nothing. Looking at all of these, like, I mean, some of them a little bit, but also like a lot of teams that are ranked not super high came through and were beating teams that were ranked um, above them. So I
Hmm.
think it kind of is like doesn't mean anything because it's a new group of girls.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Really doesn't mean anything. You never know how their spring season went or yeah, what freshmen teams are bringing in, what transfers. So it
Mhm.
all changes up, but yeah, those rankings definitely are already all shaken up.
Yeah.
So yeah. Do you want to talk about some games that you're looking forward to this next week and what to look out for and watch?
Yes, UNC and Georgia are going to be playing on Thursday. So it's that'll be an interesting game. I think UNC after playing Tennessee maybe will be excited to go up against another obviously bigger named team and kind of see how things will work out for them. And then also TCU and Iowa, both pretty high ranked teams. Um, I think that'll be a fun game. Um,
Mm.
both those teams have done well in the past, so it'll be interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's going to be a great game to watch and the UNC one. And then last, I'd say Tennessee's playing UCLA, so that's going to be also a good game. Tennessee's kind of a really hot team right now, so we'll
Yeah.
see. We'll see how that goes.
Yes, definitely. And who do you guys play this upcoming week?
This upcoming week, we play just Cincinnati on Thursday. That's it. Mm-hmm.
Luck.
But and who do you guys play again? Do you guys have a game on Sunday as well?
Yeah, we play Wednesday. So we play Youngstown. And they've played Indiana and Texas Tech so far. So um it'll be interesting to see. So we play them on Wednesday and then we go and play SLU on Sunday, which is always a really big game, a little bit of like a rivalry game. And they also have like a kids' night that night. So there'll be a lot of fans. They
Yeah.
always bring out a ton of fans. Um,
Hmm.
so I'm really looking forward to that game. Obviously, looking right now at the Youngstown game, it's tomorrow. So um, yeah, it'll be exciting.
Hmm. Awesome.
Hey guys, today we have my strength and conditioning coach, Ana Menendez, with us. Ana was a former swimmer at the University of South Carolina and is from Spain. So Ana, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into strength and conditioning?
Yep. Hi, everybody. So a little bit about myself. Like Kate said, I'm from Spain. So 9 years ago, I came to the US to swim in college. I swim at the University of South Carolina. for 4 years. And while I was there, that's when I kind of got into the strength and conditioning world. I wasn't very familiar with it before I got here. So my freshman year was quite the transition for me. Just getting used to like being in the weight room, learning all new things. And then my sophomore year, when our strength coach, we switched strength coaches, something about my strength coach, like we clicked right away. She was a former swimmer as well. So just the way I was being coached, it made me like a lot more the area, like strength and conditioning, whereas before, like I liked it, but I wasn't thinking about that being part of my future. And then from there, as the years went by when I was swimmer, and like I felt how much better I was at my sport thanks to that area, like once that started to improve. And then I realized that I wanted to do that moving forward after I graduated from college. So um, I did an internship there at South Carolina my senior year with the strength and conditioning department. And then from there, I got a graduate assistantship at Florida State, where I was working on my master's in sports science and then working also with the Olympic sports, the strength coaches for the Olympic sports. So when I was there, I was assistant with swimming, beach and indoor volleyball, and the women's soccer program. And I was also in charge of cheer and dance. But one of the sports that I really enjoy working with was soccer, just because I got to work with some athletes that were also going through a return to play, which was fairly new to me as well. And then also getting to learn more about the conditioning aspect of things, because as being a swimmer, all my conditioning came from swimming. So just learning, I like learning. So any opportunity that I had to learn new things and like know a different sport, I just took advantage of it. And working with a program like that is like really high level, just know what the best do, really helped me a lot to where I am today. And then spent 2 years at Florida State. And then after that, I got a job here at the University of Missouri. So I've been here for 3 years, going into my fourth year now. And I've been working with the soccer team since I got here. I was also working with track and women's golf and diving.
What does like an in-season training look like right now? And then can you compare that to like what our off-season training kind of looks like?
Yeah, so for the in season, the main goal is to maintain all the qualities that we were training throughout the off season. So all the strength that we gain throughout the off season, all the power, all the speed, make sure those qualities don't decrease as the season goes through. So with that means like make sure the athletes are continue to be exposed to all of those qualities, but kind of microdosing in a little bit, not necessarily like, okay, we're gonna do a strength block right now and then move into a power block. It's just making sure they're getting enough stimulus with each one of the different qualities so they don't lose them. So depending on which one are you working versus power versus speed or strength, your body only holds onto it for a certain amount of time. So making sure they hit those every certain days is important for them to not lose them. And then so not necessarily trying to make any gains in the in season, just maintain what we have. And then in the off season, that's when we start working on all the deficiencies that we've seen throughout the off season, the in season, sorry. What does the team need? Making sure everybody has a really good aerobic base, obviously depending on what position you're playing. That might look a little bit different, but making sure everybody has a really good aerobic base so they can handle all the training moving forwards. Really working on like getting everybody's strength up. Bilateral, so both legs, and then unilateral, so single leg as well, which is really important for soccer. And then working on like speed and power, but at different times of the off season.
Hmm. That sounds great and really interesting how kind of it makes sense to maintain during the season and then build and get better at kind of what you individually need to get better at in the off season. You kind of touched on it, but how do you kind of tailor the workouts for each positions and like each individual player? Like, how are they different?
So obviously there's a big difference between field players and goalkeepers. So that's going to be one of the main ones. Obviously goalkeepers, they do need to have a really good base, but it's not as important or like as it doesn't have to be as high as it would be for a field player. They don't have to run as much, but their position in nature is an explosive position. Like they do a lot of explosive movements. So they still need to have a good base to make sure that they're able to be explosive repeated times, not just 10 and then that's it. So for them, that is a little bit of what we do in the off season, but then during the season, for example, they will have a lot more explosive and like power oriented movements on a lift versus the players. Then making sure their strength also stays up throughout the season, because for goalkeeper, like a way for you to be explosive is through strength. So making sure you're not losing that strength, because if that decreases, then it's going to be a little bit harder for you to continue to be explosive. Um, and then for field players, it depends. In season is a little bit similar for everybody. Um, it can be adjusted depending on like conversations with the athletes and with the coaches as well. Meaning, hey, like this person today was not looking great or has not been looking good for the past like 2 weeks. Looks like they're a little bit like just more tired than they should be. Then we can adjust the program a little bit and like give them more rest. But as far as like the off season goes, um, for example, everybody should be good at the basics. Like you got to learn how to like land. You need to learn. You need to get your eccentric strength. You need to get your speed, your power. But there's some certain positions, like for example, forwards are the ones that typically make a lot of like the faster runs and more repeated. So it's just making sure we are preparing them to handle those kind of demands. For example, in the weight room, like making sure their posterior strength that is good. So their hamstrings are able to handle all of that. For a midfielder, they're the ones that are gonna be have to move side to side a lot more. So making sure we incorporate movements in all three planes so they get that strength as well. And then from the defenders, for example, they are gonna have to go in a lot more tackles. So just making sure they have an overall strength, like not just lower body, but also upper body, so they can handle anybody that is trying to tackle them, any defending moments and things like that.
Yeah, one thing you had talked about was like with each player was like specifically like their load, a little bit of like their loads. How do we like balance players' loads when you are in season, when you're doing like strength and conditioning plus like so many, usually like 2 games a week? Like how do you balance that?
Well, just making sure we know, like, have ideas of what each practice should look like. Meaning like, okay, we want to make sure that a practice before a game is fairly light. Um, and then 2 days before we can train a little bit more. Making sure it's not monotonous throughout the week. Just there's like different changes in how much we do our practice. And then from a strength and conditioning standpoint, like one of the days of the week is more recovery emphasis for those players that have been playing a lot. Versus the other day is more of like a main training day for everybody. So just making sure we are using our time wisely, but also not overloading anybody, because this is not the moment to overload. Versus in the off season, that is when we can overload everybody, obviously being smart about it and like following an order of things and making sure we're giving everybody enough like recovery. But now is not the time to technically like overload everybody.
Yeah, that makes sense. More generally now, for athletes who are just starting to learn to lift or get into strength programs, what do you think they should focus on like first at the beginning when they're first starting to lift?
I think they should focus on the basics. Everybody should learn how to squat, everybody should learn how to hinge, meaning like an RDL. Anybody should know how to do single leg movements. So what would be a split squat, what would be a single leg squat. Everybody should know how to press for an upper body, and everybody should know how to pull. And then as far as like core goes, everybody can train core, but if you're working on learning how to squat, RDL, all of those compound movements are going to make you train your core at the same time, which is more relatable to what sports are in general. Like any sport, you're not just only using your core, like you have to learn how to connect that to the rest of your body. So it's not like, oh, you have to do a ton of crunches. No, like training with like learning how to squat and do the main movements will also train your core at the same time. So that would be my piece of advice.
How important is it then for like younger athletes to be focusing on like form when lifting? Because I feel like a big thing a lot of people talk about is like how much weight you can lift. Like what would you say then like about like what how much form, how important the form is then based off weight?
I think form, it's very, very important. If you don't have good form and then you get in the habit of lifting not properly, then your body is just going to start getting adjusted to that type of movement, and it may not be how it like actually correlates with what your sport is. And it's all about like muscle memory. So the more you do something, the easier it's going to be for you to remember it. Now, if you do something wrong or not properly for a long, long time and don't fix it, then your body's going to think that that's the proper way. And then it's going to be a lot harder for you down the years, like down the road, to change that form. So when you're starting, I think it's really important to learn like the proper form and like focus on that, not so much on how much weight you can utilize. That can come later on.
Yeah, that makes sense. Form first, and then you can kind of work on the weight.
Yep.
Can you talk to a little bit now about how like strength training, lifting is related to kind of preventing injuries and how also you incorporate some particular like injury prevention mechanisms into strength training, how you can do that?
So to me, injury prevention comes from any lifting that you do, basically. There are certain movements that we can utilize in like warm-ups that are not necessarily weighted, so more body weight exercises. We're utilizing like mini bands, things like that. That can be implemented in a warm-up, whether it's in a lift or even out in the field. But for me, the biggest way of preventing injuries is through like the actual lifting. So for your body, you have to stress your body to be able to create some sort of adaptation. And whatever adaptation you're trying to get to, that's what's going to help you become a better athlete at whatever sport you're doing. So in order for you to stress your body, like you have to load it. So anytime you're doing any like very light exercises, there's a time and place for things, but when it comes when it's time to like train and prepare yourself for the season coming up, it is important that you learn how to like overload, like load your body and stress it. um I mean, for soccer, the you don't need to be the strongest person in the room, but being stronger is going to make your body be more resilient. Especially there's like the eccentric strength, like you need to learn how to absorb forces when you're a soccer player because of all the decelerations that you're doing, all the jumping that you're doing, all the non-contact injuries, like those come from like the deceleration piece. So make sure you are stronger in that phase so your body's able to handle that when the time comes. And that purely comes from the weight room. So training that in the off season, I think it's definitely really important. And then it's just for me, strength training is like preparing your body for what the load is going to be when it's time to perform, essentially.
Yeah, I think we work on that like I mean a lot when it comes to our team specifically. Another thing is we do a lot of like recovery I feel like, and I would probably say same for you, Leah. How important is recovery when it comes to playing and everything once you kind of get into season?
It's just as important as your training sessions and as important as your nutrition and as important as your hydration. It's just it gets to a point that if you don't take care of your bodies when you really need to, then they're gonna get to a point that they will break down. So making sure you're really taking care of your bodies outside of the field, whatever your sport is really, really important, especially in the in season, which is when you want to stay fresh as much as possible and like be ready for a game day, for when you have your next race, whatever that means. Um, taking care of the 21 hours of your day that you're not actually training, it's really important.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What is one thing you wish every athlete knew about strength and conditioning that they probably don't?
Kind of going back to what I just said about the importance of strength training. I think a lot of people think that lifting a lot of weight, like it's very dangerous. Yes, it is if you've never lifted before and that's the first thing that you do, but knowing that that is a really important piece for your success out on the field or in your sport. If you're not stronger, you can produce a lot of power, which whatever your sport is, that's probably going to happen at some point. You're gonna need that. So making sure you're strong, and then the stronger you are, like I said before, the more resilient your body is, and the less likelihood, like the less likely you are to have injuries too. Versus if you completely ignore it and don't think it's important, could be better than that. Like you should still train.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Anna, for coming on and giving some advice to some younger athletes and also just talking about the importance of strength and conditioning. I think we learned a lot, and the listeners will learn a lot from what you had to say today. It was so great having Anna on to discuss some things about soccer, strength and conditioning. And I think one of my biggest takeaways from like what she had to say was the importance of of your form when it comes to lifting, especially as like a young athlete. I think that's a big thing that people don't really think about a lot is just because people love to talk about how much you're lifting, but form is number one before you start putting a lot of weight on the bar. That was one of my biggest takeaways. What's one of your takeaways you got from that conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was a great takeaway to take away, to obviously take away from her. I also found it, she really stressed the importance of weightlifting in order to prevent injuries. Like any sort of weightlifting helps to prevent injuries, especially in soccer. So I feel like that's the biggest takeaway I got from her discussion, and it was great having her on. So thanks for setting that up.
Yes, of course. And thank you all for listening to another episode of the Big Life Podcast.
Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at kphillips04 and at leah.klinke. And make sure to send us your questions. We love hearing from you guys.
Yes, we'll be back next week with more updates from the season. Until then, see you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.